some period before you can, the council can have plan changes?
So under the Resource Management Act, there is a period for 2 years after a plan becomes operative, in which a council can refuse to consider requests for private plan changes, but there is no restriction on when a council themselves can decide that they want to notify a public plan change.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. I knew there was some sort of...
I mean, obviously you would need to weigh up the cost of doing that against the cost of you've just gone through a costly process, but there's no restriction on the council doing it.
Okay. Anything else you want to add?
There's
Jane?
one last slide.
Oh, there's one. There is. Sorry. Yep.
And we have alluded to this already, but we need to also remember that what we're doing here in terms of the proposed Auckland unitary plan will also have an impact on the consenting side of the RMA. This is where the rubber hits the road. So if there are appeals on the council decision, what does this mean for consenting? The Auckland plan cannot be made fully operative until all appeals on the council's decisions on recommendations are resolved. And then those parts that are appealed cannot be made operative until all related appeals and recommendations are resolved. So in this situation, the relevant parts of the council's legacy plans would remain in effect until the Auckland plan is made fully operative. So what this means is that consents will be required under both legacy plans and the Auckland unitary plan. So just to unpackage that a little bit, it is the situation that we would have normally if there were a plan change that happens over the top of an operative plan. What happens for someone seeking a consent is that you need to look at both what's contained in the plan change and what is contained in the operative plan. In this instance, we'd have the operative plans underneath and the proposed Auckland unitary plan not yet operative. Someone seeking consent would need to obtain consents under both of those plans. It becomes very, very complex, which is one reason why we want to get the plan made operative as soon as possible.
Very good.
So,
Councillor Webster.
so just teasing that out a bit. So if somebody objected to something, say in the rural area, it would only really pertain to that legacy council district plan in that area. But what if they objected to or appealed something at a regional level? Does that mean the whole plan? I mean, hopefully it won't happen, but I mean, the thing is, so if it's at a local level, if it's at a district level, that means the rest of the plan is operative for the rest of Auckland. But if it's at a regional level, what are the implications of that?
That is one of the very issues that we have to grapple with. And what might happen is, for example, a particular policy at a high level is appealed, and that will have flow-on effects to the district level provisions related to that, which will mean that that line won't be able to be made operative. Until
so if I give you an example, which is what I talked about before we started the meeting, ONLs on private land. If somebody appealed that, say Federated Farmers, I'm picking this, I'm not saying this is going to happen, but I'm just picking examples of what could be a live example. Would that mean that the regional ONL wouldn't come in, or can someone sort
that's really getting into too detailed a level to provide you with a proper answer at this point in time.
I think the other thing is, remember, they could only appeal it if we rejected. So it really does depend on what the council rejects.
Yes.
So you know, if you were talking in a very theoretical approach, the fewer things that the council rejects at the regional strategy level is better, because they don't have the flow-on effects to the lower levels of the plan. Rejecting the zoning of XY area is only focused the plan on that, the appeal on that point.
Probably what I'm getting at, Penny. So I was just trying to find Okay.
So we would probably be trying to caution you against rejecting too many at the higher level unless they were strategic, the outcome was against the strategic intent of this council. But down at a lower level, there is less implications for preventing the whole plan becoming operative when it's down at the zoning level.
So can I just, sorry, I'm just want to get my head around this because it's quite important. I'm not talking about the council necessarily rejecting. The council might accept, but then we get appeal.
You can only get an appeal if what we've accepted was out of scope.
Okay, sorry.
No,
We're
we're
going
going
to
to
have a
have
long
this.
morning already.
I think it's important that people get really, really clear that that's what this session is for. You know, we've got a lot of stuff to go through, but if we just get clear on this legal framework, that's a really important footing on which to go forward, because it is really confusing. It's different, and we need to be very, very clear of the parameters within which we're operating. It's no longer like this, don't like that. We're going to have to be very clear about how we're doing this. Any other questions on the legal framework? Okay, so I've made some notes of stuff that does seem to be a bit thorny and a bit complex, and we can actually come back to those. Just to summarise, we've also parked, and we'll come back to the bigger issue of how do we get those recommendations out and in a digestible form to our community and in a meaningful way, whilst acknowledging the fact that this isn't a consultation and submission phase. Again, there is no ability for us to do that, but we want people to be absolutely aware and clear of what we're doing, why and how, and to feel that they understand it. Anything else that we need to raise, James, Penny? No? Okay, well, shall we go on to our next presentation? So we'll just do a bit of a time check. I know we were meant to finish at 11:30, but we started a little bit late, so people happy we finish at 12? Yep.
And Chair,
And I know you and Councillor Filipaina.
10 past 11, and me, unfortunately.
Oh, okay, hang on a minute.
Actually, Madam Chair, I can stay here. Penny, are you going to the meeting on NZLG?
no, I've got to go to a funeral in Helensville, the second one this week, I have to say.
Well, if one of us is at that meeting, it should be all right. So I can. We just need someone to go to the NZLG
Which
meeting to
meeting?
talk about local boards and representation.
Oh, look,
for half an hour.
No,
I don't think
I
that's
don't, I don't think that's important, and I
Someone,
don't.
no.
Mark's
I get
got
that.
big ideas.
Well, I
on that.
Someone
just-
needs to be there.
No,
Can we not?
is that the one, sorry, can I just,
Yeah.
I'm sorry to take up time. Is that the one Marguerite called?
Yes.
Well, I think we need to shelve that because
Right,
things have
okay.
happened since then.
Righty.
End of story.
I think that can be
I'm here, Madam Chair.
had
Totally
at any
not.
time, and it may just be us and Mark, as usual. Good on you, Mark Thomas, always being there. Okay, so let's plug on. John,
Right,
you're it.
thank you, Penny. I might try and liven this up with a little quiz along the way. How about that?
Like John Duke, a
luck
bit of
with that.
personality and pizzazz.
Some little
Oh,
quiz here.
lollies! Bribery, excellent. Bring that on.
3 questions along the way. So there's 2 parts to this presentation. The first is basically Planning 101. I know you're all experts on planning, so this should be a breeze.
I think we are.
Through it.
Oh, wearing you down.
The Planning 101 and the second part is Unitary Plan 101, so it's all good stuff. All very easy. So the RMA, introduced in 1991, quite some time ago now, replaced the Town and Country Planning Act at the time. So I think as you're all well aware, all councils across the whole nation are required to produce policy statements and plans for their local area. Essentially, the RMA is all about looking after the environment, but also it has the notion of sustainable management in the purpose of the Act, and that's social, economic and cultural well-being, as well as planning for the use of natural resources. So regional councils are required to prepare a regional policy statement and also regional coastal plan. District councils are required to prepare district plans, and regional councils have the option of also preparing regional plans for things like air quality and water quality. So there's a range of different ways councils have done that, but as a unitary authority, we are required to prepare all of those plans, the regional policy statement, a district plan, and a regional coastal plan, and also regional planning rules dealing with air quality and water quality. So those council planning documents tell you essentially what you can and can't do without a resource consent. They generally talk about activities, things like retail, and they tend to talk about development as well, things like buildings or earthworks. And when central government wants to give some national guidance, they can do that under the RMA through national policy statements, for example, the New Zealand Coastal Policy Statement, or national environmental standards, which are quite prescriptive standards around things like telecommunications cabinets and things like that, that all councils have to essentially adopt or be consistent with. So this is the planning hierarchy under the RMA, with the Act itself sitting at the top, the National Environmental Standards and Regulations sitting under that, together with the New Zealand Coastal Policy Statement and the any other national policy statements. And then we get to the unitary plan, which comprises the regional policy statement that I mentioned, a regional coastal plan, regional plan provisions for air quality and water quality and the like, and then the district plan, which really deals with the nuts and bolts of things like subdivision, new buildings, activities like retail, where you can and can't have retail, and those sorts of things are your bread and butter in your district plan. So that's the RMA planning hierarchy. Preparing a plan under the RMA, James has talked about some of this in terms of the Schedule 1 process compared to the unitary plan, slightly unique process for the unitary plan, but essentially the unitary plan is required to adhere to the purpose principles of the RMA and many parts of the RMA. RMA requires councils to have a systematic approach to identifying what the planning issues are, or the environmental issues, establishing objectives, selecting and implementing policies and methods, and then something that perhaps councils haven't been so good at is evaluating the effectiveness of their plans. That's all required under the RMA. RMA clearly involves some tough calls, some complex decisions that need to be made by councils, some trade-offs between multiple and competing values and interests. James has talked about the requirement to prepare a Section 32 report for any regional policy statement or district plan or a plan change. There's always a requirement for a Section 32 report, and I'll touch on what Section 32 requires in a second. But it's really all about demonstrating that your objectives, your policies and your methods or your rules are consistent with the purpose of the RMA, is what it all sheets back to. Interestingly, the RMA doesn't specifically talk about unitary plans. It does allow the ability for a regional council and its district councils in its region to prepare what they call a combined plan, which is essentially a unitary plan, and some councils have collaborated in that way. So it does enable a fully combined regional policy statement, district plan, regional coastal plan, and some councils have done that, but very few have brought together in that way. And certainly before amalgamation, we didn't have anything like that in Auckland, but we now do. So one slide on Section 32. It is looking at the benefits of any new regulation and whether they outweigh the costs and risks, and it does require you to look at social, economic, cultural and environmental costs and benefits, not just the economic costs and benefits. A policy statement or a plan, so regional policy statement or a district plan, it's about ensuring that they're developed using sound evidence, rigorous analysis to get to the right outcome, and that the thinking and reasons behind your policy statement or plan are clearly communicated to the community and decision makers, and also that there's a record of that analysis going forward. Often Section 32 includes a whole lot of technical studies and reports. The Section 32 for the unitary plan is notified, runs to many, many volumes, and has a whole range of technical reports that back that up. So, any questions on the basics, purpose of the RMA and Section 32? Really?
No, I just got that. Move on.
Got that? Down pat?
Very good. Excellent.
Okay, well,
We can come back. Oh, John?
Yeah, sorry, just a quick one in light of what we were hearing before in terms of this hierarchy. Obviously then the unitary plan is subsidiary to these policy statements, so I'm assuming that in terms of, you know, any potential rejections or anything, if it's contrary to one of those, or a case is arguable, does that cut through, you know, I'll say the section 32 analysis, or if it can be shown to be contrary to the policy statement, is that an
You're
immediate
talking
rejection?
about up here, the national policy statements up here.